نجوم السما قرب لك من قلبي اللي انت هجرته، ولا مرة عملت حسابه، مش ممكن هيقرب لك عالحب، خلاص حرمته وقفلت خلاص على بابه.
Just hit record.
You hit the record button. Okay, great. So like I was saying, thank you to everyone who helped put this memorial tribute together. Welcome to everyone once again. And the program, I just want to outline quickly so that everybody knows what's coming and what's planned. Once we get into, I'm going to do a little brief introduction and my own, talk a little bit about my own relationship with Nawal. And then I would like to share a very short couple of minute clip that another mutual friend, Barbara Nimri Aziz, who could not be here today, but she has shared of a radio interview that she did with Nawal, just so we can hear her voice with us as we embark on this, short journey together, remembering her and paying our respects to her today. And then I will invite, there were so many of you, I know, near and far, who loved her and who all want to say something about her. And, those who were closest to her, we will begin with her friend, her very good friend Suhair Sukari, an Egyptian American professor at LaGuardia Community College, and who is currently joining us from Cairo. She was the first person I called when I heard the news. We shared some very happy and dear memories of time with Nawal together. Leila, Ahmed, professor at the Harvard Divinity School, who is also she's a prominent Egyptian American scholar. And I'm very grateful that she was able also to join us, who also knew and obviously worked with and invited Nawal many times to her institution, followed by, and I hope Omnia Amin has been able to join us. She is at Zayed University in the UAE, and had also a very warm and close relationship with Nawal. Suhair will introduce Mr. Salah Diab, who will say a few words about his newspaper Al-Masri Al-Yom, which gave a lot of space to Nawal's writings in her later years in Egypt, followed by Evelyn Akkad, Margot Badram, Miriam Cooke, who are all very prominent in the field of Arab and Arab American feminism from their different fields. Evelyn, of course, is an author, and they, of course, all knew and worked with and respected and loved our dear Nawal. And then we have, I'm very grateful, Robin Morgan, Zila Eisenstein. I'm unfortunately, Gloria had to have I got a message from her this morning, Gloria Steinem, who was very much looking forward to join us, but needed to, had to have to be tested. I'm assuming, something that we are all going through, right? Having to be tested for this wretched COVID, but she's fine, and but she just is not available at this time. But we will also then hear from a couple of her friends and colleagues who invited her at their institutions, Khadija George, Adele Newsom Hurst from Morgan State, and very wonderful to have Vijay Prashad and Robert J.C. Young rounding off this this very wonderful gathering here. Vijay, who will, does not need an introduction, and will bring, I think, some comments to bear on the importance that Nawal had as a really an intellectual of the left, with progressive views, that she always touted very bravely. And Robert, who is both a friend and a dear friend and a colleague and a very respected, well-known post-colonial scholar and critic, will also mention, talk about Nawal's importance in the world to all of us in this field, and also tell us about something that he's planning. And finally, I would like to share some photographs that I have in this PowerPoint that I've prepared that will, introduce, we'll go through some of the things that Nawal did in conjunction with Sohair and me here and others, particularly to promote her Arab Women's Solidarity Association. And then I will sing, a little bit of a song that she really loved and always requested that I sing. So I would like to send her off with a few bars of Sufi music from Pakistan. So I would like to now begin by just reading something that I think will resonate with us, sent to me, a poem by the late Maya Angelou, sent to me by a colleague from Montclair State, Patricia Williams. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes tight, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration, to be, our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed, so we can be and be better, for they existed. When great trees fall, from Maya Angelou. I need to get back to my, I don't know why. Alex, can we get back to this, to the PowerPoint, please? I don't know why it's gotten stuck here. But I would like to say that one of the things that really attracted me to Nawal when I first met her, which was, I think, back in 1998, we were both, I went to see her, to hear her speak at the Brecht Forum. And her boldness in criticizing religion, it really struck me, because Pakistan was also undergoing this turn towards a very unhealthy and extremist form of religious extremism under General Zia. And just hearing her speak from the context of what had been happening in Egypt was really very affirming. And I was just struck by her, fearlessness in sort of talking about some of those issues that a lot of people at the time really were not comfortable. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear also of feeding into Islamophobia that was growing in this country. But she was very, very uncompromising in her vision. Shortly thereafter, I invited her to come to Montclair State University for a year. And she stayed on for beyond a year because she was facing growing threats, not just from the Islamists, the Islamist threat in Egypt, but also from so-called secular authoritarian government. And we had seen that much earlier under, secular Sadat. She had been jailed for her views in 1981. She was a breath of fresh air for Montclair. Her course, creativity and dissidence, described her to a T. I mean, creativity and dissidence, that is what Nawal really represented. I still recall a talk that she was giving, a lecture at the university. And when she was talking about how the hijab, for example, was pre-Islamic custom and not mandated at all by the Quran, there were a lot of disagreements and resistance to that in the audience. And she walked up to one particular person who was really agitated and saying she was wrong. And I got a little scared, I have to tell you, when she bent down very quietly, very gently, as was her wont, and just, I thought, well, what is she going to do now? But she whispered in his ear and she said, how do you know this is what it is? Does God speak to you in your ear? I thought, I was struck by that, and I've never forgotten that. She was gentle but firm in, in expressing what she thought was, was something that needed to be said. I just want to say a few more words which acknowledge that she was somebody who really expanded the idea of feminism beyond a kind of white Western liberal feminist thought, which she recognized very clearly often ended up serving the needs of empire, to acknowledging the need that women's organizations and women's thought and women's theorizing and activism needed to come from the ground up and to stay focused on the third world, as it was then called, right? And now we call it the global south, that was really the need of the moment. She understood the importance of building transcultural and transnational networks of solidarity, improving the understanding, not just between the North and South, but to really encourage South-South dialogues through conferences like the Arab Solidarity, Women's Solidarity Association that she, sort of rejuvenated. And that is where I met so many of the people, the wonderful feminists who are gathered here today to pay our respects. This lesson in transcultural friendship we learned from Nawal. She helped many of us shed our narrow interests and narrow ways of looking at the world and understanding us, understanding things in narrow nation state or other kinds of ways. She helped a lot of, I think, northern feminists shed their arrogant gaze because she was not, in fact, a self-hating native informant out to reify existing stereotypes of poor, victimized, oppressed Arab and Muslim women. She was not, even though sometimes she was misunderstood to be that. She did not fall into the camp of cheering on a liberal Western feminist agenda of saving brown women from brown men. In fact, she exposed all of the unholy alliances that she encapsulated in this one statement that she always used, that we live under neoliberal capitalist patriarchy. So she never separated gender issues out from class issues out from those of a neoliberal capitalist system that pushes the imperium on the rest of the world. I have had a dream since I was a child, she said, a very mad dream, but very simple, to change the world. And that dream, she said, even towards the end of her life, is still alive. That is the dream that we who loved and admired her also share. And in continuing to pursue that dream, we continue, I believe, to keep her. That is how we will continue to keep her and her legacy alive. Her husband, when I was there for an AUSA conference, Sharif Atata at that time was her third husband. I asked him, I said, what's it like to be married to Nawal? And he replied, Well, it's like climbing a mountain. Very, very hard work. But when you get to the top, when you reach the summit, if you're lucky, then the view is absolutely amazing. Thank you, Ya Nawal, for allowing us to have a glimpse of that amazing view that was you. I would like to transition to a quick, Alex, I'm not sure why this is frozen. How can we get back to the rest of the?
Here, try moving away from the screen, and then you should be able to click on either side on a different slide.
Yeah, because when I do a backspace. Whoops, we've gone out. I'm gonna have to, I'm afraid. Do you think you can bring it up on your end? I'm so sorry. Forgive me, everyone, for this little snafu.
Yes.
We had it down to a T, but if you could bring that up, please, that might make it a little easier. Yeah, here we are. So can you just move down to this photograph, please? Yeah. If you can just stay with the, yeah, there we are. I just love these. I had snapped in my last visit to her. I think this one on the left was painted by somebody during the Arab uprising in Tahrir Square, right? Adal, justice, yeah. Nawal as a young girl to the right. It's just, you can see the fire in her eyes. Next slide, please, Alex. And this is in our bedroom. I just love it. I wanted to share this with you all. Ya Nawal, Habibti, Kifal. Those are the three phrases I knew in Arabic, and we would always begin with that. I would always say that whenever I met her. The next slide, please. As Margaret Atwood once noted, at a time when nobody else was talking, Nawal and Saadawi spoke the unspeakable. This very captured something very profound there. Next slide, please. So this is what, if we can play this, it's about a 3.5-minute clip, and it will explain itself.
Many readers, male and female alike, of your work have missed that point and characterized you as being anti-Islamic, as being against certain cultural practices which violate women. Can you tell us what you mean by patriarchal oppression in the United States as well as in Egypt and elsewhere? Yes, patriarchy, usually I speak and I write, I don't speak about patriarchy alone. I say the class patriarchal system, because we were oppressed in history, not just because of patriarchy, the so male domination. It's both class oppression, economic oppression, and male domination in the state and in the family. So in all my books, in all my work, I never say patriarchy, I say the class patriarchal system. Because here in the US, many women, many feminists, they speak about patriarchy, but they avoid the class dimension. And because my background, I came from a poor family in the village in Egypt by the Nile, so I am very class conscious. And I know that when you are poor, you are oppressed, even if you are a man. But when you are poor and a woman, you are oppressed more and more, of course. So patriarchy is based on knowing the father. Patriarchy came from the father, to know the father. And to know the father is something that came in history very recently, because women gave birth to children, so they know their children. But the father didn't know his role in fertilization. But once private property and the father wanted to know his children, to inherit them his land and money, he started to be interested in knowing his fatherhood, who his children are. So the society or men who gain power, they forced women into monogamy. So women should marry only one husband. If the woman marries two husbands, then fatherhood will never be known and the whole patriarchal system will collapse. So patriarchy is based mainly on forced monogamy on women. And is that the first level at which control of the woman's body? Exactly. Exactly. Women before patriarchy were polygamous in ancient Egypt, because fatherhood was not known. So women had not one husband, many husbands, and women gave their name to their children So the female line was the most important, and identity in society came through the mother.
Yes,
As it still does in Jewish society.
and that's why in ancient Egypt, in ancient civilizations, women had a very, very respectable status because it was more or less a matriarchal society. With the shift to patriarchy, women lost their status, their position in religion. We had our female goddesses. Women no longer became goddesses, or they became the symbol of the devil, you know. So there is, we can talk about that many, many hours, but to be short, that with this monogamy, forced monogamy on women, certain procedures has to be done to their bodies, like cutting their sexual organs so that they will be satisfied only with one man, the husband. A chastity belt, veiling, seclusion, unpaid work, because when you do not have money in your hands, then you cannot be mobile, you don't have freedom. All these measures, so the veiling, female circumcision, seclusion, unpaid work, is not related to any religion, to Islam or Christianity or Judaism. It is related to patriarchy, to the evolution of the class patriarchal system, what's called the slave system. But some political groups, they try to link that to Islam. They say female circumcision started with Islam, veiling started with Islam, sexual oppression with Islam, you know. So I write against that. And in spite of that, they say I'm anti-Islamic.
Thank you, Alex. Can you just bring up the next slide and just leave it there, because we're going to turn now. I'm going to introduce Leila Ahmed in a little while, but I want you to spotlight Suhair Sukari, please, who is here with us from Cairo in Egypt. Can we do that so we can see Suhair? There she is, right here.
Yeah.
Could you spotlight her, please? And also unmute her. Suhair Sukari is an old friend of Nawal al-Saadawi's, and thanks to her generosity and her love and the opening of her home many times whenever Nawal would visit here in New York, which is where Suhair maintains her primary home. I can't thank you enough, Suhair, for all of the happy and wonderful memories full of laughter and joy and fights even, yes, that we have enjoyed together, and the good work that we did in your apartment around Ausa. So you are currently joining us from Cairo, and you are somebody who has worked long and hard also on spreading and coming up with the Sukari method, as you call it, to teach Arabic and Arab literacy to all interested everywhere. So you have also worked as an Arabic translator for the United Nations. And we are very grateful for you. You have joined us and taken the time. And, you and I called each other immediately afterwards, after Nawal passed away. And it was really wonderful to be able to share that moment of grief with you, Ya Suhair. And I also just want to say welcome to Atif Hatata and Mona Helmi, who are her two children. They are also on this call. They are watching, and they just, they are in our thoughts and prayers. So Suhair. Can we unmute? I don't know if she can unmute herself. Alex?
Yeah.
Please. Okay, we should be able to hear you, Suhair.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much, Fawzia. I remember when Nawal passed away, it was a devastation for everybody. And we talked together, and I thought we should have this eulogy, and I'm so grateful to you that you took all the process afterwards, and you're doing a great job. Thank you so very much. I remember the first time I met Nawal. I was the deputy chief of the Arabic language department at the United Nations. And my colleagues decided that, or actually suggested that we invite a lady writer. And they told me her name was Nawal Saadawi. And I was in charge of the Arab Club at the United Nations at the time also. I really didn't know who Nawal was. I was in the United States for many years. So we did invite her, and I had to read a book at least before I was going to introduce her to the United Nations Arab community. And I was shocked. I thought I was a courageous woman. After I read Nawal, I thought I was the most coward person ever. She had this sense of truth that she wanted to come out, which I'm the first one. I can't bring all the truth I want to say myself, especially in our part of the world. We have to what do you say, to treat matters with kid gloves. But anyway, after that meeting, I was so impressed with Nawal's speech at the United Nations, and many of my colleagues were saying, oh, she talked about this and that, and I was fascinated, and I invited her and many of our friends at the Arab Club at the United Nations to my place, which is just a block away from the UN, which I still live in. And it was around 4 o'clock. We went to my place, and everybody left at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day. We had a blast with Nawal. And she told me, of course, I'm sleeping over. I'm not going to the hotel. I said, no. She said, I think I'm going to bring my stuff and stay here. I'm not going to the hotel and stay alone. Ever since then, Nawal, whenever she came to New York, whether she's invited, and usually the inviter offers her a 5-star room hotel, she says, no, 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 I'm bringing my bags and coming to stay with you. Lucky was I. I knew most of you. My house became an international Grand Central Station. I enjoyed all her friends. We had the best of times. Whenever she came, it was breakfast with XYZ, lunch with another XYZ, coffee, tea, dinner, after dinner, midnight cabs. My God, I loved every minute of it. And I was also so happy to know Mona and Atif. Atif, I consider him one of my 4th sons. I love him so much. Mona, I love her as a sister, but I could have a 4th child like Atif. But anyway, I love this family. I was here in Egypt lately because of the school I adopted to launch this new method of teaching children from the age of 2 to 6. And I'm stationed here in Cairo most of the time. I still go back and forth, of course, but whenever I'm here, I used to go and see Nawal almost at least twice a month. We bring kebab, we have a drink, we have a great time together. And unfortunately, just the night before she passed away, I was in the States having my vaccine. I begged Atif that I go to the hospital and see Nawal. And he said, I'm sorry, Tante Soher, nobody can go because she was moved into the intensive care unit. I promise you tomorrow, maybe you could come and see her. Unfortunately, tomorrow never came. And that's the only thing I'm so sorry about. But I think we were all lucky to know Nawal had a piece of her intelligence. Just a friend sent me a clip of Nawal's interview with one of the TV shows, which of course she had many, many. She was asked, aren't you afraid of life and death? Aren't you afraid of death? And Nawal said, I rid myself of fear. But death, there is nothing called death. And the interviewer was shocked. She told her, what do you mean there is no death? There is death. It's in the Quran, in the Bible, in the Torah, everywhere. Everybody knows there is death. Nawal told, the answer was so beautiful. She told her, when we die, we don't feel death. So we don't know it. Why should I be afraid of something we will not know? I have seen many, many patients who died in front of me. As soon as they died, they didn't feel it. So I'm not afraid of death. It does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nawal still is alive with us. And she did not experience death. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you said something beautiful and powerful. And that's also part of that was her faith also, right? Whether she acknowledged or not, the idea that, and she was never afraid of death. She was not. Absolutely. Thank you, Soher. We'll hear from you again towards the end. I want to share some slides that will bring back some happy memories. And I know you have one or two more things to say. So next up is Leila Ahmed, our wonderful, also brilliant Egyptian American scholar, known for her work on women and gender. So Alex, can you bring up the slide that shows Leila and Nawal together? There we go. Indeed, path-breaking Egyptian feminists. So I will, I think this was taken in 2003. And Leila, Professor Leila Ahmed joins us. Leila, please do share a few thoughts of your interactions, memories with Nawal with us. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Thank you so much, Fawzia, for bringing us all together. This is a wonderful, solemn, but also celebratory event. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello to everyone. So the first time I met Nawal, I think this was the first time, was at a Women's Studies conference here in the United States, sometime in the early 1980s. All I remember about the conference today was a conversation which took place between Nawal and the woman who had invited her there. A conversation which for some reason I was party to. In the course, Nawal's host, I'll call her Ms. A, began telling Nawal that she was not to speak about such and such issues. I don't now recall which. Nawal's instant response was astonishment and mild outrage. You're telling me, Nawal Saadawi, she said, what I can and cannot speak about? This obviously was sheer absurdity, given that Nawal had famously gone to prison for saying and writing exactly what she thought. I joined her in her protests and Ms. A soon backed down. The author of more than 40 books, Nawal was the dynamo of intellectual and imaginative creativity, forever generating new ideas, new books, new novels, new forms of writing. For she was an innovator as a writer too. She had the gift, among other things, to be able to write, not always, but often enough, compellingly, and even almost mesmerizingly, in both her fiction and nonfiction. In addition, she also continually challenged not only patriarchy, but all systems of power and oppression, wherever she saw them. Her primary targets were often, at least through the first decades of her career, the cultural practices and beliefs of Egypt, the Arab world, and Islam. But in more recent times, she also she wrote incisively about many issues of our times, and her work is of relevance well beyond the region from which she came. It would be a mistake, I think, to ghettoize her as of relevance only to Islam and the Arab world. Nawal was a force of nature, a global figure and global thinker. Her thought and body of work, consistently critical of systems of power, raise questions about and are relevant to many aspects of our lives and world today in whatever country we find ourselves. Am I therefore also saying that I always agreed with Nawal about everything, or even that we should always agree with her? Of course not. In fact, one doesn't typically agree or disagree with forces of nature, the wind, the sea, or people of prodigious and freewheeling creativity like Nawal Saadawi. My sense of loss at this moment with Nawal's living presence and living voice now gone from this world is acute and personal. We've been colleagues and fellow workers in relation to women in Islam, as well as warm and cordial friends over these many decades. I will miss her voice and miss learning from her typically insightful perspectives on whatever is going on in our world. It was a great honor and privilege to have known her, as well as a wonderful gift and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leila, for those words. Thank you. I would like to, Dr. Omnia Amin, I do not see her on our, in the group. She was also in Egypt and may have had some difficulty joining us, but she was one of Nawal's younger friends and has written about her, translated some work by her. And I think what we can do, Alex, is there is a very short clip that was a video clip shared by Omnia and I think Donna Johnson, who will also say a few words in a little while, in a recent visit that they made with Nawal. And I think it will be nice to just, it's very quintessential Nawal and just about a minute long. Can you turn to the slides again, please? So I think if we go to, no, not Radio Tahrir, and you will have to fix this. This is, your screen is not looking very good. I can't see it very clearly, Alex. Okay, that's much better. So can we go down to, I think this one, the one that I'm on, my cursor right here. Yep. No, right below this. Where have you gone? Wait a minute. Go up. Yeah, yep. This one. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So this is Dr. Omnia Amin. She is here with Nawal in Nawal's kitchen, which was a really gathering spot whenever we visited her. And this is a short clip. So let's look at this. If everybody mutes, yeah, we should be able to hear her.
Yes, sweet.
Can we?
Can you read the words again?
Never retreat. I do that. That's my philosophy. Never explain. No, I explain sometimes. I explain. Never apologize. No, I apologize when I am wrong. When I do a mistake, I apologize. So never apologize. In the abstract, I don't agree. When I make a mistake, I apologize. So I agree with her. Never retreat. Yes. Never explain. No, I should explain to people who do not know. Never apologize. No, I apologize when I did something wrong. Get the thing done. Yes, I do that. And let them howl. Yes, let them howl. Of course. Let them howl. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let them howl. Really build just what Professor Ahmed also shared with us, right? She could not be silenced. And that was, I think she was being asked to read a quote by a writer, activist called Nellie McClung, who I don't know. But she expressed what she thought of of that quote, and it's nice just to be able to see and hear her voice. So next I would like to invite Mr. Salah Dayab, who is the editor, founding editor and owner of one of Egypt's largest circulating private newspapers, who would like to say a few words about his relationship with Nawal, especially in the later years. Welcome, Ahlan wa sahlan, Mr. Dayab. Oh, sorry, 1 minute. We have to unmute. Alex, I think you have to unmute him, please.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, I'm not an editor. I'm not, in fact, I'm not a scholar, but I assume, yes, I was the founder of Al-Masri Al-Yawm. That's one thing. And then I tried my luck with writing some articles here and there, which put me in all kinds of misunderstandings. However, I was first I was introduced to Nawal Saadawi when she gave me one of her novels depicting the story of her being jailed, put in jail, how they came. It was I read it, and it was extremely touching when they came knocking at her door. And then when she opened the door and she found a bunch of people who dragged her out, everything ended with her wearing the prison gown. But it was a very interesting story, and I was really intrigued by her as a novel. And in fact, I've invited a famous film director, Ines El-Dagheidi, and she was also excited to start. And what made her probably hesitant was because Nawal, as we all expect, and I don't blame her, but she was terribly demanding. That's one thing. Of course, the difference between us all, or most of us, and Nawal, that is that we are all going to leave. There's an end to our journey. But Nawal left us with a very rich number of books. In fact, it is not a big number of books, it's a library of books. 50 books at her lifetime that made her what she is. I called, she visited me at my home, and we were discussing how to start on the adventure. For me, there's an adventure of starting a film. I would have been the producer of that film, as I was the founder of Al-Masri Al-Yawm. But it didn't work, and time wasn't on our side. What is really remarkable about Nawal is that she was in very bad health the last 4 months of her lifetime. But her last article in Al-Masri Al-Yawm was on the 2nd of November, 2020. And she started this article with a question: is it poverty or sex? Not making sex, I mean sex by genders. Is this, what's the reason of what's behind the retardation of the Arab world? Is it poverty or sex? And she went on, interesting as usual. And with no inhibitions as usual. She started subjects and issues while she was a woman that no man dared to come close to. And right now, as we speak today, they're putting penalties on what she, if anybody stops what she has preached to be stopped, and that is the circumcision of women. And she made her campaign 50 years ago, and right now they're full believers in what she said, and all that came against our Egyptian Muslim Vatican, which is Al-Azhar, that can at any moment stand, or sometimes it stands in the root of anything that allows progress to happen.
Thank you very, very much for your comments, Mr. Diab. Really, having known her the way that you did, I'm sure was, you know, really a mutual relationship of respect. And of course, you were honored, as I'm sure that she was, to be able to write in your newspaper. I thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts, Mr. Diab. Thank you, shukran. Alex, could we go back to the slideshow, please? I want to, you know, bring up some slides that show, as Evelyn Akkad, Professor Emerita from University of Illinois, well-known author, wrote about many of the things that concerned Nawal as well. I know they had a close bond. Evelyn, I'm so sorry that we never actually met, but I have heard much about you, and I know that she loved your art, your artistry, your music. She loved all that. So I'm very grateful that you were able to be here today and to join us, Evelyn. So please offer your comments, and we have, yes, here we go. I think you will enjoy this one, this wonderful photograph of you and her here, beautiful. So we're gonna scroll a few of the photographs that you sent. You can share with us. I think these are some of your students. Right there, right? She's probably giving a lecture you had invited her to. And then, yes, another one with just you and her again. And one, there we are playing the guitar and singing for Nawal, who loved music and all the arts. So there you are. That's just a lovely photograph. This is a love that we shared with her. And she often used to say to me, I wish I could sing, you know? And I told her, you do sing. You sing in your writing. Evelyn, please. And please unmute Evelyn, Alex.
Yep.
Thank you so much. And can we have her spotlighted, please? I don't, yeah. Evelyn, can you, she's still muted. Yeah, there we are. Evelyn, we can now hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about dear Nawal. And the first picture that you saw was when we were in Paris at La Fête de l'Humanité, and we were both young in those days. And then the first time it was, I had invited her in the early 80s at the University of Illinois for a conference on women. And this is when we first met. And she was just out of prison. And she was in a lot of pain. I mean, her back was really hurting a lot. And I can appreciate that now because I'm talking to you from Beirut. And I was hit by the explosion of the port, and I had very bad back pain, and I can appreciate that. So that was the first time that I met Nawal, and we became very good friends ever since. And the last time I saw her was when I invited her in Beirut for another conference on women in 2015, so not so long ago. And that was the last time. And in between, we used to see each other a lot. And every time she would tell me, please, Evelyn, bring your guitar and sing. So I thought that in honor of her, maybe if you allow me just to sing a few lines of a song that she particularly liked and asked me to sing.
That's just wonderful, Evelyn. Please do us that honor. What a wonderful way to remember her. Thank you.
Resist, 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 for all of us resist, for the rest of the world resist. قومي 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 لكلنا قومي للعالم كله قومي. We are all women. We are all women. Last summer we were all Lebanese. 70 years for Palestine. One day in January, all Turks were Armenians. All Turks were Armenians. We are with the suffering, the wounded of the world, the wounded of the world. Sexuality is the order of the world. Bring down the walls. Give hope to all. Bring down the walls. Give hope to all. Resist, resist, resist. For all of us resist. For the rest of the world resist. Wallahi, that was wonderful. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you.
Sing now that she's no longer there and that I have kind of lost my voice in this explosion, but
yeah,
it means so much to us women who have been struggling all our life. It means so much that her message is carried and is with us.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you very, very much. That was just beautiful and profound. And I think music was so important to Nawal. That is why I chose to begin with that song by another Nawal that she loved. Apparently, I think Omni Amin told me she loved this song. She had asked me also about this one. So I think to have these moments where we remember her through song, they really connect with really part of her spirit and her soul that just loved music and song and the arts in general. I mean, thank you very, very much for sharing that. This is very important. I'm going to turn now to Margot Badran, who is here pictured. Everybody can see, yeah? Are you with me? You can see my screen, yes? Yes. Margot Badran left on the left. I'm afraid I don't know who the young woman is, although she looks very familiar in the middle. I feel like I've met her, but I can't place her. And Nawal, of course, on the right. Margot Badran has been also very, very important in writing as a historian about women in the Arab world, Arab feminism. She has lived for many years in Egypt, continues to go back and forth as a Woodrow Wilson Fellow. But Margot, I've had the pleasure to meet you several times, write on, on Islam and gender. So please share some of your thoughts with us. Alex, you're going to, yeah, please. And also, why can I not see?
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it unmuted?
Yep.
Yes, Margot, we can hear and see.
Okay.
Yes,
Fawzia,
wonderful.
thank you so much for bringing us all together to remember and Nawal and to be strengthened by our memory and our presence together today. And it's very nice to be back in touch with you, and because we have met in Cairo, we have met in various places in the States, so you are everywhere, it seems to me. I came to know Nawal through The Hidden Face of Eve when it was published in London in 1980. It came out here 2 years later. I was mesmerized, I use Leila Ahmed's verb here, by how she combined personal experience, breaking the silence around sexuality and the female body and talking about her own experience in this regard, with historical accounts of outspoken and independent-minded Arab women, Arab and Muslim women. Soon after I met Nawal in the early 80s, probably around the time that Evelyn met her, and Nawal came to Hamilton College, where I was teaching at the time, and really enchanted the students. It was quite exciting. I'd like to switch now to 1985, when finally, after a lot of efforts over several years, Nawal was able to register the Arab Women's Solidarity Association, AUSA, as everybody knows. AUSA became the epicenter of second wave feminism at a time when forces of arch-patriarchal political Islam were in high gear. It was a very exciting and rather perilous time, and I remember those years. AUSA engaged in intellectual activism through conferences and nedwas, which were public seminars, along with her huge, prodigious output of writings. For AUSA's inaugural conference in 1986, Nawal adopted the slogan, "Unveiling the Mind." The AUSA conferences drew young and middle-aged women and men from from Egypt and other Arab countries, along with some Westerners. I remember the second AUSA conference in 1988 under the banner Contemporary Arab Thought and Women, and the very lively debates that took place around issues of patriarchy, class, imperialism, and so on. They were very, very energizing and exciting sort of interactions. The nedwas, or the public intellectual gatherings, were held every month or so and were more spirited and more contentious than the conferences. In the conferences, there was really a spirit of camaraderie and sisterhood and brotherhood and all of this sort of thing. And people were encouraging each other, even though they could disagree. But in the Nedwas, it was much more tense and rather often angry moments. The Nedwas drew more of a middle-aged audience of women and men, again, always the two sexes, often who were often prominent in their professions and public life. They were mainly leftists and other progressives, but also some religious conservatives and Islamists showed up. And actually, Nawal really encouraged this. And at that time, these folks were clashing rather than talking, or rather than even agreeing to be in the same room. So that was quite an interesting thing.
Marvelous. What wonderful memories, Margot, and really doing a kind of, as a historian, providing us with, the specifics of these different groups and what was at stake actually, and what was going on, and Nawal's role there. I think that's really wonderful of you to share and share with us and inform us on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to see you. And I want to turn now to, if we can, let me just see. So these are some photographs of people who I'm going to invite to speak a little bit later, but I would like to invite next Miriam Cooke, Braxton Craven Professor of Arab Cultures at Duke, who was also known to and friends with Nawal and colleagues for a very, very long time, invited her many times to Duke as well. I know Nawal spoke very highly of you, Miriam, and of your work, and of how important you were really in her life. So please, if you can join us and say a few words, we'd be grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And I love it that I'm following my dear friends who are also going to be talking tomorrow at Duke. So first of all, Leila Ahmed, and then Evelyn Akkad, and of course, Margot. So, boy, there's so many stories. So let me just quickly, for those who don't know, tell you how it happened that Nawal ended up being in America for as long as she was. So it was, I think, December of '92. Student of mine, Elizabeth Oram, was with Nawal in her apartment with Sharif. The guards arrived. Nawal is like, oh my God, I know that I'm on the death list, but I'm really scared of these guards, because of course these were the people responsible for her being in prison under Sadat. So Elizabeth called me and Nawal called me, Miriam, you have to save me. Okay, so I went to the dean, and to my surprise, he said, yeah, she should come with Sharif. And so that's how it happened, that she was based at Duke from '93 to '97. She was gone a lot during that time. And I think that was during that period that she was also at Montclair. So there's so many stories that I'm going to talk fast, but I want to tell you one that I think you'll love and sounds so Nawal. So my husband, Bruce Lawrence, who is here, eating lunch. So he taught a class that was about God and human rights. And he had Nawal come to one of the classes. And the students read something by her. And then to celebrate the end of the class, they decided that what they were going to do is they were going to do a puppet show. So it's, tennis sock puppet show. And it was a debate between Thomas Merton, the Dalai Lama, Simone Weil, and Nawal. So we have a Chinese altar, and we covered it in a tablecloth, and underneath it was something. So the debate goes on and on about, justice and God and these fantastic people talking to each other. and they're all blaming God. And so at a certain point, from underneath the altar, there is this deep, booming voice. And it is, I am God, and I resign from this summit. So we have Nawal absolutely thunderstruck. And she says, and the room is, it's at our house, and the room is full of students. And Nawal just is blown away. And she says, I have never heard God's voice. So Asad-Rahman, who was God underneath the altar, he stands up rather sheepishly and he goes, actually, ma'am, my name is Asad-Rahman. She says, no, I heard God's voice. So I've had a thought about this. Maybe one of the Asma al-Husna, one of the beautiful names of God, should be voice. So anyway, she is just excited. For 3 days, I can't get hold of her. I call and call and call, and then finally I come to the apartment and I knock on the door and I yell, Nawal, it's Miriam. Oh, she says, come in. So I come in to the apartment. She is seated on the floor on a mattress because she didn't like our soft beds. So she was seated on this mattress with a cushion behind her back. The floor is flooded in white papers. And I'm like, Nawal, what's going on? She said, I have not slept for 3 nights. I have just finished a play and it's called Leila, not Allah. Leila يقدم استقالته في اجتماع القمة. So God resigns at the summit. Miriam, it has to be played here at Duke. It's a Duke play, but somebody has to translate it into English. So I asked a number of people who were like, oh my God, these guys are gonna kill me. And so finally, a wonderful guy who will, to the end of his life, remain anonymous, agreed to translate it. It was put on. And Nawal said, you see, things are fantastic at Duke. This play can be put on at Duke. It can never, ever be either published or performed in Egypt. So much to my surprise, in 2006, the play does get published in Egypt. Ajib, how did that happen? So it turns out that Madbouli, those of you who know Cairo, had said to Nawal, you know, really, I think all of your books have to be reissued. And so just give them to me. So in her funny way, she snuck the manuscript of God Resigns at the summit into a huge pile of stuff. It all came out. The 2 of them were sued. I think they dropped the suit against Madbouli, they being Azhar, of course. And so Nawal's like,
there you are.
Hey, that was great. And she, of course, went to court and she won in 2008.
And that's just such a wonderful, wonderful story, Miriam. And it totally encapsulates Nawal. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you so much. That was great. We have next, I would like to invite Robin Morgan, Zila, and then Zila Eisenstein. And I think I just saw Omni Amin joined us, so maybe we can ask her to say a few words and then sort of move towards the conclusion we have planned. So thank you. Yeah. So Robin Morgan needs no introduction. Very wonderful to have you here, Robin. I tried very hard. I know Jessica Newworth is also here. Thank you. I know Gloria wanted to be here. Really nice to see all of you. But I remember that wonderful evening that we had at Jessica's home, a fabulous home in New York City when Nawal was here. I think that was 2011. And we were disagreeing about many things and agreeing about others. And it was this great conclave of fabulous feminists from all over. I think Hillary was a topic of conversation. She had just announced or was about to announce, I can't remember, had she already announced her bid for, you know, running for presidents. And I just remember it as being a high point, really. And I looked very hard to find, I did have some photographs of all of us, but unfortunately I couldn't find them. So you will maybe remind us of that over other things. Robin, thank you for joining us. You don't need an introduction.
I wish I had known, Fawzia, I would have sent you wonderful photographs, but they're not.
Well, we will add them. I'm sure this will, you know, we can keep them.
I want to start by just saying shukran etir to Fawzia for bringing us together today. This is just amazing that you did this. And also it's been so wonderful for me to see so many familiar faces, old and new, Suhair and Jessica Newworth and Mona up there in Canada, and Evelyn Assad, my God, and Leila, and at least 2 Miriams. So this is like a gathering of the clan, you know, the good clan. And it's been wonderful hearing you all. I made some little quick notes so I would not take too much time. I have 4 points that I want to get to, and I want to make it really tight. The first is that when I was writing, assembling the anthology Sisterhood is Global, because Hatshepsut was already clearly dead, and so was Hoda Sharawi, and so was Eflatun. It clearly was going to be this woman named Nawal Saadawi. So in the late 70s, we got to know each other by writing together. And she gladly wrote the piece on Egypt, in the midst of which, by the early 80s, Sadat busted her and she was arrested. So she had just given the piece in manuscript to a typist. She called the typist, she said, destroy it. The piece was totally destroyed. She was hauled off to prison. I heard about all this and thought, what can I possibly do? And I was at the time an editor at Ms. And so I leveraged Gloria, who had been on a kind of celebrity trip to Egypt the year before, to see if she knew Madame Sadat. It turned out she had met her at some ceremony or other. So together on extension lines, we called Madame Sadat. To our astonishment and a slight horror, she herself picked up the phone. So the two of us went at her. I mean, we didn't know it was a private number. We went at her about Nawal Sadat and my God, and she was not in the best of health and the dampness in the prison. And we vamped until ready. We did everything that we could. And it was all on humanitarian grounds. And she said, well, you know, I have no effect on government, but I'll see what I can do. And we left it there. And all we knew was that 48 hours later, she was released. Of course, the government never said this was due to pressure. This was due to feminists. God, no. But she was released. That was, of course, that time. There were many times in and out of prison. So what did she do? She rewrote the entire piece and gave it to her typist again. So that was one. We became personal friends over the years. Every time she came to New York, or we met at conferences, we used to joke, we have to stop meeting like this, people will begin to talk. We met at conferences all over the world, and certainly in New York City. The book came out, the Sisterhood is Global Institute was founded, as Jessica well knows, because it's now the home for Donor Direct Action. And I finally got to go to Egypt. I was en route to my second trip into Palestine. And it was an amazing trip because I spent much of it in Cairo and some of it on the Nile with her, and some of it in the Valley of Kings with her. Some of it, we even took 2 weekends off. One weekend to be tourists and ride camels. She had never ridden a camel, and I sure as hell had never ridden a camel. So I was very surprised that they A, smelled, B, screamed, and 3, went down in sections, this way and then that way. But we had a great time. And then the second weekend that we took was to go to her little country house, very small, very sweet, that she very proudly had built. But the amazing thing about that trip for me was the women, the village women around there, who, as we were taking walks, would come up and tug at her robes and try to embrace her. Dr. Nawal, she had delivered, this is a world famous writer and physician and crusader for women. She had personally delivered this one's baby, helped this one when she had broken arm, played, you know, she was a local participating physician. And they adored her. Dr. Nawal, so good to see you. So good to see you. Yeah. So, so the last time I saw her was when she was in town, and we did tape this for Tina, what's her name's Women of the World thing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And she insisted that I be the person to interview her. Well, no, they said they wanted Tina to interview. She said, I don't want that because she's going to ask me boring questions. And I know Robin and I will make trouble. And so I got to ask her the questions, and we were up there and I still have pictures and film of it. And it's quite, and we made a lot of trouble that upset Tina tremendously, but it was very fun. The thing about Nawal, I think, that is the most wonderful, well, I mean, her humor, when we were crossing Tahrir Square, she said, this was long before Tahrir Square happened. She said, you know, you can get killed crossing Tahrir on an ordinary day. And then later on in the last interview, she spoke a great deal about the young in Tahrir Square and her enormous optimism about that, and how, Robin, she said, do you know, they put me on the back of a motorcycle, me on a motorcycle, and they drove me through the crowd. And I spent the night in the square, all curled up, fetal position. Her excitement, her passion, and her utter magnificence has to be acknowledged, as for all women, not only Egyptian women, not only Arab women, not only Muslim women, but all women on the planet. And the thing about her in her contentiousness is, which I saw in Egypt very clearly, when she was with feminists, she was defending Marxists and general progressives and men. But when she was with them, she was fiercely defending feminists. And periodically we would get together and agree, isn't it all really part of the same thing? Yeah, well, of course it is, but they have little minds, she said, and they don't understand.
Robin, that was just wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Fawzia. Thank you.
Oh, this is just, you know, it has been wonderful. All of the things that everybody has shared. I mean, it's just gives us a glimpse into the richness and complexity and multi-layeredness, right?
Yeah,
Of this
flower.
Yes,
and she will continue to
many
flower.
layers. Yeah, no, thank you. Really was an honor to have all of you. I'm sure she's somewhere out there, you know, just smiling and saying, there they all are, right? This is wonderful. Thank you, Robin. I would like to ask Zila Eisenstein to please say a few words, Professor Emerita of Politics at Ithaca College, and also a dear friend. So Zila, please, and then I would like to invite Vijay and Robert Young up, and then we'll sort of see how the time goes. And I know there are a few other people who'd like to say a few words before we conclude. So I think we're going to have to speed it up a little bit, but not too much. Please say what you have to say, Zila. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, and thank you. And I do want to say hello to everyone on this call. So many of you I have learned so much from, have read your work, taught them in my class. And there are just, you know, there are just giants here. So, you know, just, I feel overwhelmed with that and the loss of Nawal. So I have written an ode to Nawal el-Saadawi for her memorial, March 28th, 2021. If you have lived an important life, there is too much to say. There is no summing up. So this is a remembrance when there are too many memories. Dear Nawal, with love for everything you were and are, fierce freedom fighter, courageous warrior for freedom. For all people, but especially Arab women across this planet. Freedom for our faces, our bodies, our hearts, our minds, our imaginations. Unveil them all. When I first met you, you already had that gorgeous head of white hair. I always could find you in a crowd, and I was always looking. I had already read your many words about liberating ourselves, and I loved that you never told me to be careful. Our dinner in Cairo was in your beautiful apartment. I was there to speak about the first Black president in the United States. Everyone wanted to know what it really meant, and if it meant anything, and especially for the world. You were dubious. The visit was filled with the camaraderie of political struggle and the smells of your cooking, which filled the air and told me that I was home. After the Egyptian revolution in Tahrir Square, 2011, you came to the States to share what was happening. We went to a meeting in New York City, and the hall was jammed full with progressives and leftists and feminists. A question came to you. What could we do in the US to help? Your answer, one that I have restated many, many times, you cannot help our revolution. You need to make your own revolution and get rid of your government and free the world. Nawal, we are trying. We love the path you have carved. I will miss you as we continue the struggle, imagining you by my side, always and for forever. Revolutionary love for you, Nawal, my comrade and my sister. Thanks, Fawzia.
Thank you, Zilla. Thank you very much. I remember fondly, we once had a panel together at the Brecht Forum. I don't know if you remember, Nawal was here yet again. And it was, you know, I mean, you've summed it up so beautifully, all of the different, as Robin was also saying, right? The interconnections of these various strands of progressive thought that she embodied and the personal connections that she forged really with all of us. It's just quite remarkable. I'd like to invite Vijay Prashad. Vijay, thank you for joining us, for being here. You also don't need any introduction. Historian, commentator, journalist, Marxist through and through, and executive director of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. I mean, I think you will speak to some of these strands within Nawal that she represented for so many of us doing the kind of work and standing for the kinds of things that you do. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Fawzia, for inviting me. The first thing I want to say is just a message to Mona and Atif. My mother died on September 16th last year at the age of 91. These women are revolutionary long-distance runners. They spent their life trying to change the world. And, you know, we had the benefit, you of a mother who lived for so many decades, and I also, a mother, lived for so many decades, guiding me, shaping me, helping me see that something was available over the horizon. I don't think we'll ever forget our mothers. Impossible, in fact, but their example, their courage, I think is what moves us. It's difficult to be a revolutionary, and I've admired people like Nawal al-Saadawi because they are and were revolutionaries. It's difficult because the world is a wretched place. It's filled with all kinds of hierarchies, of course, exploitation, hideous exploitation, but also terrible oppression. oppression of patriarchy, oppression of caste, oppression of religious difference, oppression of one kind of the or the other, alongside and intertwined with exploitation, hideous exploitation, wretched oppression, both of them putting people down. It's difficult to be a revolutionary because we have to live in this world, and yet we want to go beyond this world. We want to go to another world. An American poet, communist poet, once said that communists, revolutionaries are exiles from the future. And people like Nawal were exiles from the future. They didn't belong in this world. My mother didn't belong in this world. She was an exile from the future. They came from there to say, let's go there. Let's not stay here. Which is why it was always difficult and complicated to take positions about the present. They had to risk themselves taking positions, unpopular positions, difficult positions, positions which tried their best to be principled. People make too much about principles. Are you principled? It's difficult to be principled always in an unprincipled world. This is an unprincipled world. I admire the courage of people like Nawaz, the bravery of people like Nawaz to risk taking positions against the hideousness of exploitation, the wretchedness of oppression. Brave people, courageous people, examples for us. That's how we remember them. We don't remember them for this book or that book or even this encounter, which many of them were quite beautiful. Not even those encounters. We remember them because they risked something. They were courageous. They teach us always to be courageous, to remember that we can't afford not to do things in this world. We can't afford not to try to make something of this world. We can't just sit around thinking that we have to have the perfect position on everything. We can't. We have to act. She was an actor. She acted in the world. And that's how I remember her. Thanks a lot, Fawzia.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. Thank you for this. I know Nawal would have just loved to hear what you just said. I mean, that was Nawal, and she did embody absolutely that revolutionary spirit and always staying optimistic, you know, in the face of so many setbacks, because she believed that the revolution was ongoing. There was no moment where you would come to and say, okay, we're done here. And she kept fighting till the end. And I'm sure she's fighting wherever she is for a better world. Thank you very much for those words, Vijay. Very much appreciated. My dear friend and you know, well-known, admired post-colonial scholar and critic, I invite Robert J.C. Young to say a few words, and I know that he has something that he wants to share about his journal intervention. So, Robert, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, Fawzia. It's such a privilege to be invited to speak on this special occasion, remembering Nawal, and especially actually in the company of so many extraordinary and remarkable women, remembering her. I want to think of her as Vijay has done as what she was, which is a revolutionary, and to remember, of course, that as we know, she was trained as a medical doctor, which for me means that she belonged to what I consider to be the most human, the most distinguished band of revolutionaries, none of whom were Westerners. It means that Nawal takes her place alongside two other doctor revolutionaries, which are Che Guevara and Frantz Fanon. And her politics emerged, I think, in a very similar way to Fanon, in fact, because just as Fanon realized very quickly on his arrival in Algeria, in the Arab world, that the psychological problems of his patients, not only the Algerians, but actually also the French colonizers, weren't individual neurotic psychoses or some deficiency of Arab people, which is what the doctors thought at the time, but the product of the psychic and physical violence of the Algerian colonial regime. So very quickly after beginning to practice as a doctor, Nawal also became convinced that the root cause of the physical and psychological problems of her women patients were more domestic violence, patriarchy, and its associated forms of cultural and class oppression. So both Fanon and Nawal had that genius to read beyond the immediate symptoms to the politics underlying it, that was producing it. And like Fanon, Nawal then had the courage, of course, to speak out fearlessly in public against the dominant regime and paid the price. She was, of course, as we all know, one of the most fearless of speakers, probably the most fearless speaker I've ever heard, I have to say. And one of the greatest achievements of that, I think, was she succeeded in being the thorn in the side of not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Egyptian presidents. And given the way, particularly, I think that literature is often regarded by social scientists and scientists as ineffectual in the real world, it's always amazing to me how it's writers, in fact, that autocrats fear, from Nasser to Sisi. Despite their extraordinary, almost absolute power as presidents, they were afraid of Nawal, which is a really unique achievement with which she has to be credited. The fact that she was a woman, I think, of course, made her particularly intimidating to them, because she could call on a constituency that they knew they couldn't control and they knew basically was against them. And I think men in power quite simply found her daunting. They were intimidated by her. She made them nervous, quite rightly often. And I remember even when Omnia brought her to NYU Abu Dhabi in 2018, which was the last time I saw her, when she was 87, there were ripples of alarm as to what she might say. And I had to reassure those in charge to stop them from cancelling the visit, that all would be okay. Though, of course, I secretly hoped that she would say something particularly provocative. So as Fawzia mentioned, before I close, I want to just tell you that the journal that I edit, Interventions, is planning a memorial issue for Nawal, and I hope that you'll all feel able and will want to contribute to that. We're interested in remembering so many aspects of this uncompromising woman from the global south who spoke on so many important issues with such uncompromising, forthright fierceness. And although happily she lived, has been mentioned, so much longer, she did the full stretch, so to speak, so much longer than either Guevara or Fanon. What's also remarkable is that her radical politics never subsided or eased off right up to her last days, which means that she was, I think, the best kind of revolutionary. Yesterday, just thinking about Nawal, I was reading again her short piece entitled Alone with Pen and Paper. Actually, it's really hard to imagine Nawal ever being alone, but it was written during that period of exile from Egypt in the 1990s. And she concludes with a memory which I think is particularly fitting for today, because she talks about how she wishes to be remembered after her death. So it seems a particularly appropriate way for me to end our thoughts, my thoughts about Nawal today. This is what she says. I still remember my father's words when I was a child. He also rebelled against the authorities and against his bosses at work. He used to tell us that nobody could take worldly goods to the grave. All that we leave behind are good deeds, my father used to say, and this expression has been engraved on my mind ever since. I want no worldly possessions, but I do want to leave good deeds behind, the books that I have written, the views and thoughts contained in them which advocate justice, freedom, and love.
Robert, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I mean, you just summed it up, right? All that she stood for and all that she meant and how she wanted to be remembered. And she did achieve that. She really did. Uncompromising till the end, as you put it. Thank you so much. Can we, will you be sharing somewhere where people who are here might, who might be interested in being involved in some way with the special issue? Yeah, I think I have to ask to unmute. Alex, can you unmute?
Yeah,
there you are.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll
Where can we?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Omnia, are you still with us? Because you weren't there for a long time, but I did see your name pop up. I don't know if you're still here.
Of course, yes,
Yes, there you are. Marvelous, marvelous. So, you know, we want to hear from you before we conclude. And, you know, I think Khadija and Adele may want to say a word or two, and then maybe a song, and that will call us to an end. So if you could please share with us. I had prepared something based on some of the photographs that you had sent, and you can see the ones I'm scrolling through, her 80th birthday party celebration, singing on the Nile. That was a high point for me, certainly. But she was, you know, it was Nawal saying to the bandmates, you have better sing. And there's lovely Mona and Sharif, and very memorable times. But our OUSA delegation to the UN. I want to just actually see if I can bring up those photographs while you share with us what some things. There you are. These are lovely photographs of you, Omnia, and of Nawal. What a beautiful bond, right? Please talk to us.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's all heartfelt. And I did say before that, you know, the bond between people who know Nawal, we need no introduction. You only just need to say, I know Nawal Saadawi, and this is an introduction in itself. Today, I don't really mourn so much the feminist and the writer, but I mourn the human being in Nawal. And for me, she struck me as, of course, I knew her first through her writings, through her activism, and I followed her. But once I met her face to face, everything changed. And how I remember Nawal is a humble woman. From the minute that our eyes met, she just kind of like adopted me. I became like a surrogate daughter. She became like a mother to me and a mentor. And I've seen her in many, many ways as a human being, genuine, who's able to open her heart, open her home. And some of you even mentioned that you went for these wonderful, priceless dinners at her place, at her humble apartment in Cairo. And I can just go in my memory of, you know, hours and hours of togetherness with her, where we were just chatting from the heart. And every time I would visit and I would say, but I've got someone with me, she'd say, bring them along. And
yes.
She would sit down and want to listen about a person. Like she would always say, not just what's your name, but what do you do? And she would drop everything. And she had this genuine love for getting to know the people around her and listening to their stories and spending time. It is a quality that is so rare with busy people. But Nawal always taught me that if you're too busy spending time with people, you haven't lived. And the last time I saw her, it was for her 89th birthday. And I went to visit her in Cairo. And I told her that we're holding a conference in her honor. And what would she like to say to the world at the age of 89?
Mm.
And she told me, tell them one thing. It is the honest word that will endure. I said, anything else? She said, no, just tell them that it's only the honest word that will endure. And I told her, Nawal, you've helped generations upon generations of men and women to heal, to grow, to see something in you. How did you do it? Tell me, how did you do things? And she said, I only read. It was by reading, writing, and discussing things, but discussing it genuinely. And these moments are just so priceless. And she said, the reason I'm here, it's because all of you are here. My words could not have done anything except through all of you, through your love, through your presence. And she said, tell them at the conference, I would have loved to be there while they're honoring me, but I will be there in my heart, in my spirit. This particular photo that you have, it's when she was in Spelman, and I've got so many stories to tell, but anyway, it will be for another time. I just wanted to end with her with that sentence that she was an honest woman, and her words were honest and her actions were honest. And if she wasn't honest, she wouldn't be this particular photo is in her kitchen, a humble kitchen, humble apartment. She wouldn't be so humble. She wouldn't die so poor. But she might be economically poor, but for me, she's the wealthiest woman I've ever known. She's the humblest person I've ever come across. She's the most giving. She's the most loving, genuine. And for me, she is honest in everything that she has done, even in the way she died. She died in Egypt, 21st of March happens to be Mother's Day. And for me, this is a statement that she is a mother to us all.
Well, you know, Omnia, she also died during Women's History Month. And I thought that also was a gift to us to remember her always, right? During, and thank you for sharing that. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Ya Omnia. And I'm glad that I met you, and thanks to Robert, we were there together, I think, in NYU Abu Dhabi. And, you know, these are great friendships with everybody who has been sharing, right? That have been enabled in many ways because of and through Nawal and what she meant to each of us in our different ways. So thank you for sharing that. I know that Khadija, if you're still there, and or Adele, if you just want to share, this is Adele right here. I think you invited her to Morgan State University, Adele. Nawal watching a football game. I think that's just great. Yeah, so if you want to add just a few words, we're happy to do that. And then we are at the end of our time.
Okay,
So.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Please allow me to preface my very brief remarks with sincere condolences to Mona and Atif. Atif, you may not remember me, but I met you when she was at Spelman, my alma mater. And I'm happy to join you all today to share diverse aspects of Nawal's life. Apart from my great admiration for her, her analytical abilities, her agile intellect, her courage, I absolutely loved her sense of humor. It bordered on the wicked. So I first met Nawal in 2007. I invited her to Missouri State University. Later that year, I traveled with her to London, and Zed had set up a series of interviews and lectures for her. So this local personality interviewed her one night, and it was clear that the woman had not read any of Nawal's books. There were a couple of books in front of the interviewer. The binder hadn't been creased. I don't think the books were open. So the interviewer frequently asked questions, but would qualify it with her own experiences as opposed to the experiences in the text. So I watched the interview from the front row, and I alternately cringed, and I was fearful of a classical Nawal response, but it didn't come. So after the ceremony, well, at one point, the interviewer says to her, what do you have in common with your character? And she was talking about in the novel, Woman at Point Zero. And so Nawal was really cool. She shared the plot of the novel, and then she told the audience something soothing like, I'm all my characters, two women in one. And she was having a bit of fun. She was referencing the 1975 novel, Two Women in One, in which the central character, of course, is a young medical student. So after the program, we picked up Pakistani food and returned to Nawal's room to eat. So we got settled with our plates, and Nawal exclaimed, "Am I a prostitute?" And I mean, that's classical Nawal. So I want to say, in one of the photos shared by Evelyn, I saw that famous hot pink Samsonite suitcase. I've never seen another one like it, as I imagine that I'll never know another Nawal. But I can say that her best gift to me were the lessons in transcultural friendship that Fawzia mentioned earlier. And again, thank you, and thank you all so much for the balm that hearing you share your stories about Nawal has done for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adele. You know, we have many, many friends here. I know many who still would like to say a few words in remembrance and, you know, paying their respects and so on. Please, if you can, share them in the chat. We have pretty much run out of time, and I apologize for that. I know there are a few others, Khadija and a couple of others who wanted to say something, but hopefully if you could, you know, post something in the chat, that would be great. It was wonderful to hear from everyone, to have you all be together in this shared space. You know, we have to thank Zoom technology at least for that, for being allowing us to come together from all over the world, really, in this shared space. And I do apologize for anyone who had wanted to say something and because of our running out of time is not able to do so. I'm just going to sing, my sort of voice has given out, but I know, like Evelyn also mentioned, she just would, you know, those of us who enjoyed singing, creating music, she just loved that side of us as well. And this is an invocation to, it's from a Sufi singer, a Sufi poet, 17th century, who really talks out, as Sufis did, right, against gender oppression and class oppression, all manners of oppression at the hands of rulers, whoever they might be, you know, against religious factionalism and so on. You know, she loved to hear this sing, and I would just, if you would indulge me, 30-second bar that is just my way of invoking her spirit, which I feel has been here with us today. I just want to send her off with that. And thank you to Atif and Mona for joining us. And please know that we all share in your profound loss today. But we are, you know, all lovers of Nawal, right? And please let us know if there is anything that we can do to sort of help you as you go through this period of mourning. So the song is, the poem is called A Spell, and it is about casting a spell on one's beloved and a way to bring the beloved back. So I think it really is appropriate and sort of fits our mood today as we both mourned and celebrated the great Nawal al-Saadawi. Ek tona hai, ek tona acha gavangi main ruthda yaar manavangi e tona main pad phooka हे टूणा मैं पढ़ पढ़ फूका सूरज अगन जलावांगी मैं रूठड़ा यार मनावांगी Nawal, you are loved around the world with love from Pakistan. Thank you. Thank you, everybody far and near who joined us today. Thank you so very much for joining us and for gracing our beloved Nawal in a way that she deserved. Thank you so much. Yalla. Thank you.